Deborah Adeyemi was 34 years old, and until that Thursday afternoon in late November 2024, she thought she had the perfect marriage. She was a secondary school history teacher in Lagos, earning about 8.5 million a year from a well-known private school on the mainland. The pay wasn't big man money, but it was stable. It was enough to help with bills, groceries, small savings, and a life that looked calm from the outside. And for the past 6 years, she had been married to Kelvin Adeyemi, a man she believed she knew better than anyone in the world. That day, Deborah made a decision that would shatter everything she believed about love, loyalty, and the man sleeping next to her every night. She decided to surprise her husband on his business trip to Abuja. Kelvin worked as a senior account manager for Meridian Pharmaceutical Marketing Nigeria, a mid-size firm that specialized in launching prescription drug campaigns and handling medical brand promotions. He had been climbing the corporate ladder fast, traveling often for client meetings, conferences, and strategy sessions. His salary had reached 15 million annually, with performance bonuses that sometimes added another 4 million on top. Deborah had always been proud of his success. Not once did she feel threatened that Kelvin earned almost double what she did. She supported every late night at the office, every weekend workshop, every business trip that took him away from their modest 3-bedroom home in Ogudu, not far from the traffic madness of the express. Their marriage had seemed solid. They had date nights when Kelvin was in town. They talked about having kids someday, maybe in another year or two when his career settled. They had renovated the kitchen together the previous year, spending weekends moving from one shop to another in Lagos. Tiles here, cupboards there, arguing playfully about colors, handles, and whether they needed that expensive cooker or not. Deborah thought they were building something real, something lasting. This particular trip was supposed to be a 3-day pharmaceutical conference at a luxury place called Ocean View Resort somewhere around the high-end side of Abuja, where politicians' children and oil people liked to stay when they didn't want anybody disturbing them. Kelvin had left on Tuesday morning, kissing Deborah goodbye at the door. His designer luggage, one of those company gifts for hitting targets, rolled behind him as he headed to his white BMW 3 Series parked neatly in the compound. He seemed distracted that morning, checking his phone constantly. But Deborah blamed it on work stress. He was pitching a major campaign to a new client, he explained while he sipped tea. The deal could mean a significant promotion to senior director, maybe even crossing into that big money bracket. "This conference can change everything for us, babe," Kelvin had said, adjusting his wristwatch like a man already tasting the future. "Diana thinks I'm ready for the next level." Diana Okoye was Kelvin's direct supervisor. She was a senior vice president who had been with Meridian for 8 years. Deborah had met her twice at company end-of-year parties, a tall, sharp woman in her early 40s who wore expensive suits like armor and spoke with that calm confidence of people who never begged for anything in life. Kelvin had always described Diana as a mentor figure, someone helping him navigate corporate politics and position himself for advancement. Deborah had planned to spend the weekend alone, grading essays on colonial history and the civil rights movement while watching football highlights. It was her comfortable routine: order food, stretch on the couch with her red pen, enjoy the quiet of an empty house. But on Wednesday evening, everything changed. Her mother called with unexpected news. Deborah's aunt, Auntie Helen, her father's elder sister who lived in Ibadan, had sent her a gift. A transfer alert came in, and Deborah blinked twice to be sure she wasn't reading wrongly. 4.6 million. Auntie Helen was 78, old school, disciplined, and the kind of woman who hid money the way some people hide secrets, quietly, carefully, over time. "She wanted you to have something special," Deborah's mother said over the phone. "Maybe you and Kelvin can use it to enjoy small. You know you people don't rest." Deborah stared at her phone, the numbers bright on the screen, and an idea formed instantly. 4.6 million wasn't life-changing money, not with how things were, but it was enough to do something spontaneous. Something romantic. Kelvin had been stressed lately, working long hours, bringing his laptop to bed, always on calls. When last did they have real adventure together?
When last did she surprise him with something thoughtful? She opened her laptop and started searching flights. There was an Air Peace flight leaving Lagos on Thursday afternoon that could get her to Abuja early evening, if Nigeria decided to behave that day and not disgrace anybody with delays. She booked it anyway. Then she searched for a beachfront-style restaurant. Abuja didn't have beach, obviously, but it had those fancy places by water that pretended they were beaches. She found a highly rated spot Kelvin had once mentioned from Instagram, Azure, a stylish restaurant with soft lights and a rich people menu. Reservation for 2, confirmed. She even ordered flowers to be delivered to herself at the hotel. 24 red roses, Kelvin's favorite type of romantic drama. Deborah told her principal she had a family emergency and needed Thursday afternoon off. She packed an overnight bag with a nice dress, her good sandals, perfume, and one small box of chocolates she knew Kelvin liked. She imagined his face when she knocked on his hotel room door. The surprise, the delight, the spontaneous romance of it all. They would have dinner, walk, reconnect away from the pressure of work and Lagos stress. The flight was smooth enough. Deborah used the journey to mark some scripts and think about her marriage. They had met at a mutual friend's wedding 7 years earlier. Kelvin had been working in entry-level pharmaceutical sales, driving around Lagos and Ogun, visiting hospitals and pharmacies, sweating in traffic with a laptop bag and hope. Deborah had just started teaching then, still idealistic about shaping young minds. They bonded over demanding jobs that didn't pay enough and dreams of traveling to places they couldn't yet afford. Their first date had been simple. Mini golf at a small entertainment spot, followed by cheap food that tasted like happiness because they were young. Kelvin had beaten her by a few points and didn't let her forget it for months. He was competitive, ambitious, driven, qualities Deborah admired because they balanced her calm nature. He pushed her to be better, to take risks, to not settle for comfortable mediocrity. They married after a year of dating in a small ceremony at a garden venue on the outskirts of Lagos. 75 guests. A small live band. Vows they wrote themselves. Kelvin promised to choose her every day, to build a life of honesty and partnership. Deborah promised to support his dreams and be his constant in a changing world. For 5 years, those promises had seemed real. Her flight landed early evening. Deborah grabbed her bag and stepped out into Abuja air that felt different from Lagos, less salty, less chaotic, but still warm. She ordered a Bolt. The driver, a chatty man named Musa, spent the ride telling her which places in Abuja were for big men and which ones were for normal people. Ocean View Resort was everything the photos promised. Sleek, modern glass architecture, palm trees, a circular driveway where valets in crisp uniforms rushed to help guests arriving in Prados and Range Rovers. The lobby was all marble and expensive art, with a chandelier that looked like frozen water drops. Deborah approached the front desk, suddenly aware of how out of place she felt among business executives in designer suits. The young woman behind the counter, her name tag read Mary, smiled professionally. "Good evening, Ma. Checking in?" "Actually," Deborah said with a small smile, "I'm here to surprise my husband, Kelvin Adeyemi. He's staying here for a conference. Room 847. Mary's fingers moved across the keyboard. Deborah watched Mary's expression shift subtly. Confusion. Then discomfort. Then something like pity. Deborah's stomach tightened. "I see Mr. Adeyemi checked in Tuesday," Mary said carefully. "But Ma, I'm not able to give you a room key. Hotel policy. I'm his wife," Deborah said quickly, pulling out her ID and their wedding photo on her phone. "See, same surname, same address." Mary glanced at the photo, then back at her screen. She bit her lip. "Mrs. Adeyemi, the room is registered under your husband's company card, but there's another guest listed on the reservation." The lobby suddenly felt too warm. "Another guest?" Deborah repeated slowly. Mary leaned in and lowered her voice. "A Mrs. Diana Okoye. She checked in yesterday afternoon." The name hit Deborah like a slap. Diana, his boss, his mentor, the woman who believed in him. "I see," Deborah said, and her voice sounded hollow even to her own ears. "Thank you." She walked away from the desk in a daze, her legs moving automatically toward the elevator. Other hotel guests brushed past her. Couples laughing, business people on phones, families looking happy, normal people having normal evenings. Deborah felt like she was watching them through glass, separate from their world. She pressed the button for the 8th floor. The elevator doors closed and she saw her reflection in the shiny metal. A woman who suddenly looked older.
More tired. The elevator rose smoothly, and Deborah's mind raced. There had to be an explanation. Maybe Diana booked a different room and the system mixed it up. Maybe they were working late and Diana was just in his room going over presentations. Maybe. The doors opened. The hallway stretched out before her, silent, carpeted in deep burgundy. Abstract paintings lined the walls, art that probably cost enough to rent a flat for a year. The hotel smelled like air freshener and money. Room 843. Deborah slowed down as she got closer, like her body was trying to protect her from whatever was waiting at the end of that corridor. Her palms were damp. The bouquet she had collected from downstairs suddenly felt heavy in her hands, as if the flowers themselves were already mourning. She stopped outside room 847. For a second, she just stood there, staring at the door like it could speak. She raised her fist to knock. But she froze when she heard voices through the wood. Kelvin's voice, low, relaxed, and laughing. Not the polite laugh he used at company dinners. Not the "I'm tired but I'm trying" laugh he gave her on weeknights when she asked how work went. This one was light, free, intimate. Then a woman's voice answered him, breathy, amused, too close. Deborah's stomach tightened so hard it felt like her insides were folding in on themselves. She pressed her ear slightly toward the door, not even thinking anymore, just listening. There was a murmur she couldn't fully catch. A pause. Then laughter again. And then the sounds came. At first, Deborah's brain tried to reject what her ears were hearing, like it was a language she refused to understand. But the rhythm was unmistakable. The soft creak of furniture. Heavy breathing. A woman's voice, suddenly not laughing anymore, now moaning in a way that sliced straight through Deborah's chest. And Kelvin's voice, deeper now, saying something she couldn't make out. Then the woman spoke again, clearer this time, like the words were being pushed out of her. God. Yes. Right there. Deborah's knees weakened. The bouquet slipped in her hands and dropped to the carpet without a sound. Her entire body went numb. Yet somehow she was aware of everything at once. The faint hum of the air conditioner. The distant clink of an elevator bell. The smell of the hallway. Expensive perfume and cleaning products. The abstract painting opposite the door. All red slashes across black, looking suddenly like a warning sign. Her heartbeat thundered in her ears, drowning out everything except the sounds coming from behind that door. Sounds that meant her marriage was over. Sounds that meant everything she believed about her life was a lie. Deborah didn't know how long she stood there. Minutes, maybe. Could have been 5. Could have been 10. Time stretched and bent like rubber. Part of her wanted to bang on that door, to burst in, to scream, to slap, to drag Kelvin out by his collar and make him look her in the face while he explained himself. But a larger part of her, the part trained by years of teaching history, of understanding how power moves, how people twist stories, how truth gets buried when emotions take over, told her to wait, to think, to plan. If she confronted them now, in her current shock, it would become noise. Kelvin would deny. He would explain. He would cry. He would turn it around. He would make her look like the jealous wife, the insecure woman who couldn't handle her husband's success. And the woman inside, Diana? She would smile that calm corporate smile and speak like a lawyer. Deborah, you're misunderstanding. Deborah, please don't embarrass yourself. No. Deborah needed leverage. Evidence. Clarity. She needed to understand the full scope of what was happening before she made any move.
With trembling hands, she picked up the flowers, held them close to her chest like they were the only thing keeping her from collapsing, and walked back down the hallway. Her steps were slow but steady. Like a woman walking away from an accident scene, refusing to look back because she knows she'll break if she does. She returned to the lobby. Mary at the front desk looked up immediately, relief flashing across her face when she saw Deborah wasn't coming to cause trouble. Deborah walked straight to her. "I need a room for tonight," she said, and her voice surprised her. It was calm. "Do you have anything available?" Mary nodded quickly. "Yes, Ma. We have a standard room available." Deborah handed over her card. Money that would come from their joint account, she thought bitterly. She collected the key card and went up to her room, several floors away from Kelvin and his betrayal. The room was nice. Crisp white sheets. A view of the city. A minibar. Deborah ignored it, even though her throat was burning for alcohol. She sat on the edge of the bed and stared at the wall. Her first instinct was to call Kelvin, to scream at him, to demand answers. Instead, she pulled out her phone and did something that felt both calculated and unreal. She began documenting everything. She took photos of the hotel exterior, the lobby, the elevator area, the hallway leading to the 8th floor. She took a photo of her flight details showing her arrival time. She opened her notes app and started writing down every detail she could remember. The conversation with Mary at the front desk. The other name on the reservation. The voices she heard. The exact room number. The moment the bouquet fell. Then Deborah did something else. She wrote Kelvin a text. Not angry. Not suspicious. Normal. "Hey babe, hope the conference is going great. I've been thinking about you all day. Can't wait to hear all about the presentations when you get home. Miss you. Love you." She stared at the message for a long moment before hitting send. Let him think everything was normal. Let him believe he had gotten away with it. Let him have no idea his wife was in the same hotel, breathing the same air, listening to his lies. 3 dots appeared almost immediately. Kelvin was typing. "Miss you too. Conference is exhausting but good. Learning a lot. Diana's presentation went really well. Probably going to be another late night. Love you." Deborah felt sick. How many times had he done this? How many late nights, conferences, and work trips had been excuses? She set the phone down and stared at the ceiling. Kelvin was married. But so was Diana, from what Deborah remembered. Deborah had seen her once with a wedding ring, taking pictures with executives at a party, looking like a woman who had everything under control. Was her husband sitting somewhere trusting her the way Deborah had trusted Kelvin? Deborah barely slept that night. Any time she closed her eyes, she heard the sounds from room 847. Any time she drifted off, she jerked awake, her chest tight, her heart racing like she was running from something invisible. She ordered room service around midnight, rice and chicken she barely touched, and spent hours on her phone researching. She looked up divorce laws in Nigeria. She read about infidelity and property division. She read stories from women who had been cheated on and then gaslighted into silence. She read about financial protection when a marriage breaks. She also searched Diana Okoye. Her LinkedIn profile popped up quickly. Impressive resume. Years of corporate climbing. Awards. Conference panels. A photo of her in a crisp suit, smiling like someone who had never begged for anything in her life. By 3 a.m., Deborah had made some decisions. She wasn't going to confront Kelvin in Abuja. She wasn't going to give him any warning. She was going back to Lagos on Friday morning as planned. And she was going to spend the weekend gathering information, understanding the full scope of this betrayal, and planning her response. Because Deborah understood something Kelvin didn't. In any conflict, the person with the best information and the most patience usually wins. Friday morning, Deborah took a bolt back to the airport. She flew home to Lagos, landing just after noon. By the time she stepped into their compound in Ogudu, their house felt different. Like a stage set. like a place pretending to be home. She walked through the living room slowly, looking at everything with new eyes. Their wedding picture on the wall, a framed photo from a holiday trip, a birthday card Kelvin once wrote her. All of it now felt like props in a story she didn't know she was acting in. She went to Kelvin's home office, his small work corner where he kept files, documents, and his laptop accessories neatly arranged. Everything was organized, labeled, planned. Deborah took photos. Then she opened drawers carefully, like she was handling evidence at a crime scene. Under some old documents, she found a note on expensive cream-colored paper. Short. Handwritten. She read it once, then again, slower. Last night was incredible. I can't stop thinking about you. I know we have to be careful, but God, I wish I could wake up next to you every morning. D. Deborah's fingers tightened around the paper. The note was dated 4 months ago, so this wasn't new. This wasn't a mistake. This was a life. A secret life. Deborah photographed the note from multiple angles, capturing the handwriting, the date, everything. Then she put it back exactly where she found it. Evidence. She wasn't sure yet what her endgame was, but she was building a case. That Friday afternoon, she went through their joint account transactions. Once her eyes knew what to look for, the pattern jumped out. Charges at restaurants she'd never been to. A florist delivery she never received. Hotel expenses in cities Kelvin had claimed were conference locations. The paper trail was long, extensive. And then she found something else. Kelvin had recently increased his life insurance policy through work. The paperwork was dated 6 weeks earlier. Deborah was listed as beneficiary. For a moment, her mind went somewhere dark. Then she forced herself to breathe. No. She refused to turn into a paranoid person overnight. Kelvin wasn't planning murder. He was just cheating. Still, the discovery left a cold taste in her mouth. By Friday evening, Deborah was exhausted but steady. She needed professional help. She searched her contacts and found James Morrison, not the same James from Kelvin's world, but her old friend. They went to the same university years ago. He had become a private investigator in Port Harcourt, and they still spoke once in a while. Deborah called him. He answered on the second ring. Deborah, long time. You don't finally forget, person, Abby. I need your professional help, Deborah said, cutting straight through small talk. And I need this to stay completely confidential. His tone changed immediately. Okay, what's going on? Deborah explained everything. The surprise trip. The hotel. Room 847. The note. The suspicious trips. When she finished, there was a long silence. Jesus. Deborah, James said quietly. I'm sorry, I don't even know what to say. I need information, Deborah said. I need to know if this is just an affair or if there's more. I need documentation, something that can stand legally. Can you help me? Yes, James said without hesitation. I'll start digging tomorrow. Then he paused. But Deborah, are you sure you want to go down this road? Sometimes knowing more just makes the pain worse. I can't move on until I understand the full truth, Deborah replied. All of it. Okay, James said softly. Give me a week. I'll be thorough. After she hung up, Deborah sat in the quiet living room and let the weight of it hit her properly. Her marriage was over. Whether she filed now or later, whether she exposed Kelvin and Diana publicly or kept it private, the relationship she thought she had was already dead. You can't unhear what you heard outside that hotel door, Deborah cried then. For the first time since Abuja, she cried for the life she thought she had, for the future she imagined, for the trust that had been broken beyond repair. She cried until she felt empty. Then she wiped her face, stood up, and started planning what came next. Because Kelvin and Diana had made a mistake. They underestimated her. They saw a calm history teacher who didn't make noise. Someone who would cry, beg, and accept. They didn't understand that Deborah spent her days teaching strategy,
teaching about wars, how they're won, how they're lost, teaching about how patience beats impulse every single time. Deborah Adeyemi was about to apply those lessons to her own life. Saturday morning, Kelvin's flight landed in Lagos in the afternoon. Deborah picked him up from the airport, pulling up to the arrivals curb just as he emerged with his rolling suitcase. He looked good. Too good. His hair was freshly trimmed. He wore a neat blazer over a fitted t-shirt, designer jeans, and shoes that looked like they had never touched dust. He also looked tired, shadows under his eyes that even confidence couldn't hide. "Babe," Kelvin called out, smiling wide like nothing in the world was wrong. He walked to the car and kissed her. And Deborah tasted betrayal on his lips. "Ah, it's good to be home," he said, exhaling like a man returning from battle. "I missed you so much." "Missed you too," Deborah said, her voice steady, as she took his suitcase and lifted it into the boot. "How was your week?" Kelvin asked, sliding into the passenger seat. "Quiet," Deborah replied, starting the engine. "Work. Marking. Nothing serious." Kelvin nodded and immediately checked his phone, scrolling as if his life depended on what was on that screen. In the car, Kelvin spoke animatedly about the conference, keynote speakers, breakout sessions, networking dinners, and how the pharmaceutical marketing space was moving fast. He had details prepared, anecdotes ready. If Deborah hadn't stood outside room 847, she would have believed him. He was a skilled liar. "Oh, and I have good news," Kelvin said, turning to her with a proud grin as they moved into traffic. "Diana told me she thinks I'm ready for that senior director position opening up early next year. It'll be a big salary bump. We can finally start thinking bigger." "Wow," Deborah said, keeping her face neutral. "That's impressive." "She's really been supportive," Kelvin continued, like he couldn't stop himself. "Honestly, I feel lucky. She sees potential in me. She's been mentoring me heavily." Deborah's fingers tightened slightly on the steering wheel. "Yeah," she said softly. "Lucky." They got home. Deborah carried Kelvin's suitcase inside. He headed to the bedroom to unpack while Deborah went to the kitchen and opened the bottle of wine she'd bought earlier in the week, his favorite. She poured 2 glasses. Her hands didn't shake. That evening, they ate dinner together like a normal couple. They watched a show Kelvin liked. He laughed in the right places, stretched his legs on the couch, even rested his head briefly against the back cushion like a man at peace. Then he fell asleep. And Deborah sat there beside him for a long time, her arm around a man who suddenly felt like a stranger. Sunday, Kelvin spent most of the day in his home office catching up on emails and preparing for Monday. Deborah went for a long walk around their area, not to exercise, but to think. The air was warm, the streets were busy, normal people were buying things, laughing, carrying groceries, living normal lives. Deborah's life didn't feel normal anymore. When she returned home, sweaty and exhausted, her phone buzzed with a message from James. "Initial findings are very interesting. A lot more here than just a simple affair. Can we talk Monday evening? I'll have a preliminary report ready." Deborah deleted the message immediately after reading it. She was careful now. Nothing could be left lying around. That Sunday evening, as they prepared dinner together, grilled chicken and salad, the routine of married life, Deborah watched Kelvin carefully. He seemed relaxed, happy even. He hummed while he ate. He told her about a funny meme one of his colleagues sent. He made plans for them to see a movie the following weekend. He felt no guilt, Deborah realized. Or if he did, he had learned to compartmentalize it so well, it didn't affect his day-to-day behavior. He could spend 3 days sleeping with his boss, then come home and act like a faithful husband. The disconnect was frightening. They went to bed and Kelvin curled up next to her like always. "I love you," he murmured sleepily. "I'm glad we have this. Some people have messy relationships and drama. I'm grateful ours is solid." Deborah stared into the darkness. "Me too," she whispered,
and wondered if Kelvin could hear how hollow it sounded. She lay awake long after he fell asleep, listening to his breathing, feeling the weight of his body near hers, and remembering how she once found comfort in it. This was her husband. They had stood in front of family and friends and promised faithfulness. Those vows had meant everything to Deborah. Apparently, they meant nothing to Kelvin. Or maybe they meant something once, and then he got tired. Maybe Diana offered him something Deborah couldn't. Power, access, excitement, a faster ladder. Maybe the life Deborah gave him was too ordinary for a man whose ambition kept growing. Deborah didn't know. And she wasn't sure which possibility hurt more. Monday morning, Deborah's emotions were under control again. She woke early, made breakfast, watched Kelvin get ready for work like she'd done 1,000 times. He was checking his phone every few minutes, smiling at certain messages, typing quick replies, and then putting his phone face down like he had nothing to hide. "Big day?" Deborah asked lightly. "Usual madness," Kelvin replied, adjusting his shirt. "Diana wants to debrief about Abuja. Then we have that major client meeting. I might come back late." "No problem," Deborah said. "I have scripts to mark." Kelvin kissed her goodbye, quick, distracted, and left. The moment his car pulled out of the compound, Deborah opened a new note on her phone and titled it, "Evidence Log." She began to document everything. Every lie Kelvin told, every suspicious transaction, every detail from Abuja, every strange conference trip, everything. Monday evening, Deborah drove to a quiet cafe on the island, far enough from their area and far enough from Kelvin's office that she wouldn't run into anyone who knew them. James was already there, sitting in a corner booth with a laptop and a manila envelope. He looked tired, like a man who had been digging through dirt all weekend. "Deborah," he said softly as she sat down, "how are you holding up?" "I'm functional," she replied. "Tell me what you found." James opened his laptop. "Diana Okoye," he began. "Age 42, married for 14 years to a man named Tunde Okoye, banking sector, 2 kids, private school, big lifestyle." He pulled up a family photo, Diana smiling beside her husband, 2 children in front of a Christmas tree, the kind of picture that screamed perfect life. "Diana has been with Meridian for 8 years, James continued. "Climbed from account manager to senior vice president. High performer, big rainmaker, her salary is heavy. Bonuses, benefits, all the corporate sweet stuff." "So she's successful," Deborah said, her voice flat. "Yes," James nodded, "but not untouchable." He leaned in slightly. "Because here's the interesting part. This is not Diana's first affair." Deborah's chest tightened. James clicked again and pulled up another file. "I found evidence of at least 2 previous men in Meridian who had situations with her. Both ended with those men leaving the company." Deborah stared at him. "Tell me." "First was a man named Chinedu Eze James," said, marketing coordinator. "Worked directly under Diana about 5 years ago. He left suddenly and his exit package included an NDA. Second?" Deborah asked, already feeling sick. "A guy named Femi Adebayo," James replied. "Senior account manager. Same position Kelvin is in now. He was being groomed for a director role." James paused and looked Deborah in the eye. Then suddenly, earlier this year, he withdrew from promotion consideration, got transferred to Meridian's East Coast office, and signed an NDA as part of his relocation package. Deborah felt heat crawl up her neck. "So the company knows," she said. "They know," James confirmed, "and they've been protecting her because she brings in revenue, big clients, big contracts. The company has decided it's cheaper to settle quietly than to expose her and lose money." He pushed the manila envelope toward Deborah. "Everything I found is in here. Dates, documentation, people willing to talk off the record. Hotel receipts showing Diana and Kelvin staying together, sometimes booked through company channels, sometimes through Kelvin's corporate card." Deborah opened the envelope and began flipping through printed emails and call logs. Nothing explicitly sexual, but intimate in a way no supervisor and subordinate should be. Messages like, "Looking forward to Abuja. Last time was incredible. Dinner tonight."
Phone records showing hundreds of calls and texts, late at night, early morning. A timeline showing Kelvin's rapid rise since he started working directly under Diana. Then James pulled up something else. "That senior director position Kelvin mentioned?" James said quietly. "It was supposed to go to someone else, one of the people Diana pushed out." Deborah's jaw tightened. "So Kelvin's promotion is tied to this?" "It appears that way," James said gently. "Which means if this comes out, Kelvin's professional reputation is finished. People will assume he climbed by sleeping with his boss, not by merit." Deborah sat back slowly, the cafe noise around them suddenly distant. This was bigger than she thought. This wasn't just her husband cheating. This was a pattern of exploitation enabled by corporate silence. A toxic environment where power swallowed people quietly and NDAs buried the bones. James watched her carefully. "What do you want to do?" he asked. Deborah's voice came out calm, but her eyes were cold. "I want the truth." James nodded. "Okay, but Deborah, you have options, and none of them are easy." He counted them carefully, like a man giving her 3 doors. Option 1 is divorce. Clean, straight. You have evidence of adultery. You can likely get a solid settlement. You can be free in a few months if Kelvin doesn't fight. "That feels like he gets off easy," Deborah said. James nodded again. "Option 2 is expose Diana and Kelvin. Tell her husband, trigger an internal investigation, blow everything up. But that's nuclear. It'll be messy and public and it might hit you too." Deborah didn't blink. "What's option 3? James's mouth lifted slightly, like he already suspected she'd ask. "Strategic approach," he said. "The patient one. The one where you gather evidence, coordinate carefully, and strike at the exact moment when they're most vulnerable." Deborah's mind flashed to her history lessons. Wars weren't won by shouting. They were won by timing, by intelligence, by leverage. "I want option 3, she said. James nodded. "I thought you might." Then his expression became serious. "One more thing, Deborah. You need to get tested." The words landed like another slap. She hadn't even thought of that. Not just emotional betrayal, but health risk. Exposure without consent. Deborah swallowed hard. "Okay," she said quietly. "I'll do it." They spent the next hour mapping out strategy. James would continue gathering evidence and discreetly reach out to the other men who left Meridian, letting them know they weren't alone. Deborah would consult with a divorce lawyer to understand her legal options and begin preparing papers, but she wouldn't file immediately. Instead, she would continue playing the role of the trusting wife while building her case quietly. As Deborah stood to leave, James touched the envelope lightly. "Deborah," he said, "once you pull the trigger on this, there's no going back." "I know," she replied. And she meant it. She left the cafe and drove straight to a clinic. The testing process was quick but humiliating, sitting in a sterile room while a nurse asked questions she never thought she'd have to answer as a married woman. The nurse was kind, professional. "Results will be ready soon," she said. "Try not to worry too much." Deborah nodded, but her throat burned. This was what betrayal looked like. Not just tears, but medical tests, legal strategy, living like a spy in your own marriage. Kelvin came home late that night, carrying takeout like a peace offering. "Babe," he said, forcing a smile, "I know I've been working crazy hours lately, so I brought food, just us." "That's sweet," Deborah said, taking the bag and unpacking the containers. "How was your day?" she asked, like a normal wife. "Intense," Kelvin replied, kicking off his shoes. "Diana and I spent 2 hours with the new client. I think we nailed it." Deborah watched him closely. He said Diana, the way people say someone they're proud to belong to. "If this deal goes through," Kelvin continued, excitement lighting his face, "my bonus alone will be big. Diana says I'm going places." Deborah nodded slowly. "Diana seems to take a lot of personal interest in your success," she said carefully. Kelvin didn't catch the danger. "She does," he replied casually. "She told me today that I remind her of herself when she was younger, hungry, ambitious, willing to do whatever it takes to win." Deborah forced a small smile. "I bet she did."
They ate dinner at the kitchen table, the one they bought together years ago. Kelvin talked about safe topics, marketing strategies, client preferences, office politics. Deborah listened, asked questions, played her role. Later, as they got ready for bed, Kelvin's phone buzzed. He glanced at it and smiled before typing a quick reply. "Everything okay?" Deborah asked from the bathroom, brushing her teeth. Kelvin didn't hesitate. "Diana has a question about tomorrow's presentation." He shook his head like he was joking. "She works too late. I keep telling her she needs better work-life balance." The irony didn't touch him at all. Tuesday, Deborah used her free period in the afternoon to meet with Rachel Morrison, the divorce lawyer her colleague had quietly recommended. Rachel's office was in a clean, tasteful building on the island. Wood paneling, framed certificates, leather chairs that looked like they had never seen stress. The air even smelled expensive, like calm people and quiet money. Rachel herself was in her mid-50s, sharply dressed in a charcoal suit, grey hair cut into a neat bob, and eyes that looked like they had seen every kind of heartbreak and still had patience left. Deborah sat down and told her everything. Not the emotional version, the factual version.
The pattern. Rachel listened without interrupting, writing notes on a pad. Sometimes she nodded slowly. Sometimes her lips tightened like she didn't like what she was hearing, but she had heard worse. When Deborah finished, Rachel placed her pen down. "You have a very strong case," she said, calm and direct.
The documentation is solid. The fact that you have hotel records, call logs, written notes, and a clear pattern makes it stronger. Deborah swallowed. "What does that mean practically?" "It means you can protect yourself," Rachel replied. "It means if he tries to twist the story, you have proof.
It means if he tries to play the victim, you have receipts." Deborah looked down at her hands. "How long does this take?" she asked. "If he wants to settle quietly, it can be fairly quick," Rachel said. "If he wants to fight and drag it, it can take longer. But most people who have been caught red-handed prefer to settle fast, because shame is expensive." Deborah gave a short, humorless breath. "He hates shame." Rachel studied her for a second. "You're not here just for a divorce," she said. Deborah's eyes lifted. "What makes you say that?" "Because you're not talking like someone who only wants peace," Rachel replied. "You're talking like someone who wants consequences." Deborah didn't deny it. So she told Rachel about Diana, about the pattern James had uncovered, about the men pushed out, about NDAs, about how Meridian protected power and buried victims. "If I'm going to lose my marriage anyway," Deborah said quietly, "shouldn't something bigger come out of this? Shouldn't this stop?" Rachel leaned back slowly, fingers interlocked. "Legally, you can inform Diana's husband," she said. "Truth is not defamation. If it's true and documented, you're standing on ground." "And Meridian?" Deborah asked. "That's where it becomes bigger," Rachel replied. "You're not an employee, so you can't sue for workplace harassment yourself." "But the victims can. If the men Diana pushed out are willing to come forward, and if Meridian knowingly enabled it, then yes, it can become serious." Deborah's face stayed still. "But," Rachel didn't sugarcoat it, "but that path is messy," she said. "It can be public, it can be draining, it can take time, it will also touch you. You will be in the middle of a scandal whether you like it or not." Deborah stared at the desk for a moment, thinking. Then she asked softly, "What would you do if you were me?" Rachel's mouth lifted slightly, not in a smile, more like respect. "I would ask myself what I truly want," she said. "Do you want revenge to make them suffer? Or justice so this doesn't happen again? Both feelings are valid, but only one of them will still leave you whole when everything is over." Deborah nodded slowly. "What if it can be both?" she asked. Rachel held her gaze. "Then you need timing," she said. "Coordination. And you must be absolutely certain. Once you strike, there's no reversing it. People's lives will break." Deborah didn't blink. "I'm certain," she said. Rachel nodded once. "Okay.
Then we plan. They spent the next hour mapping out strategy. Rachel would prepare divorce papers, but they would hold them until Deborah gave the go-ahead.
Rachel would also quietly reach out to the men who had left Meridian, the ones tied to Diana's pattern, to see who was willing to speak and what documentation they had. Before Deborah left, Rachel added one more thing, gently but firmly. Deborah, I know he hurt you terribly, but the situation has layers.
Diana is his supervisor. There is a power imbalance. He might not see himself as a victim, but power dynamics matter. Deborah nodded, even though her stomach tightened. Yes, Diana had power. But Kelvin still made daily choices. He still came home and lied. Still kissed Deborah with the same mouth he used elsewhere. Still planned his future with her like she was a fool. Those were choices, not accidents. Rachel gave her a quiet look. Just keep your head. Don't let anger make you reckless. Deborah stood up. Anger is not leading this, she said. And that was the truth. Strategy was. That night, Deborah came home and acted normal. Kelvin acted normal too. He ate, talked, laughed. And Deborah watched him the way you watch someone whose mask you've finally seen through. Wednesday evening, Deborah was marking papers in the living room when her phone buzzed. An email from James. The subject line was short.
Urgent, you need to see this. Deborah's heart didn't race anymore. It just sank, like her body already knew what was coming. She opened it. Screenshots. Messages between Kelvin and Diana from earlier that day. Deborah read them once, then again, slower. Because some messages don't just hurt, they change who you are. Diana. Tunde asked about Abuja. He's acting suspicious. Kelvin. What did you tell him? Diana. Conference meetings, dinners, networking. He didn't fully buy it. Kelvin. We need to be careful. Diana. Maybe we should cool things off for a while. This is getting complicated.
Kelvin. We've been through this before. Just a few more months until your promotion is locked in and your salary increase kicks in. Then we decide. Diana. Do you really think you'll leave, Deborah? You've been saying it for months. Kelvin. I promise. By this time next year, we'll be together for real.
No more hiding. We file around the same time. People will think we're just moving on from dead marriages. Diana. I can't keep lying to Tunde forever. He's a good man. He doesn't deserve this. Kelvin. Then end it. Tell him you want a divorce. You don't need to mention us. Diana. I can't. Not yet. He'll ask too many questions. And you know Deborah. She's analytical. She'll figure it out. Kelvin. Besides, if I file now, we split everything. Maybe worse. Diana. Better to wait until after the promotion, after I move some money around. Then I'll have more leverage. Kelvin. Smart. That's my man. Diana. I learned from the best. Kelvin. What time should I tell Deborah I'll be home tonight? Diana. Late. I booked us a room at the Intercontinental, room 1247. I'll be there by 7. Kelvin. Bring that black dress I like. Diana. You're terrible. Kelvin. I love it. Diana. I love you too. See you soon. Deborah stared at the screen. Her chest didn't feel like it was breaking anymore. It felt like it had hardened. Because this wasn't a mistake. This was calculated. Planned. They were not just cheating. They were plotting. Kelvin wasn't only betraying her emotionally. He was planning to destroy her financially, to corner her, to blindside her when he had leverage. And Diana was encouraging it like it was strategy. Deborah forwarded the screenshots to Rachel with one sentence. Timeline needs to move up. How soon can we strike? Rachel responded quickly. I've been making calls. One of the former employees is willing to talk. He has documentation. We can file a formal workplace complaint on Monday and send notice to Meridian's legal team. That gives us the opening. Can you be ready by Monday? Deborah typed. Monday works. Let's do this. Then she deleted the thread and cleared her history like her life depended on it. Because now it did. An hour later, Kelvin texted. Working super late. Big project. Don't wait up. Love you. Deborah knew exactly where he was going. Probably excited. Probably feeling powerful. Probably wearing that good husband mask while he walked into betrayal like it was normal. She replied, No problem. Love you too. Then she poured herself a drink, something she rarely did on a weekday, and sat outside. The street was calm. A neighbor's generator hummed softly.
Christmas lights were already appearing on nearby balconies, twinkling like normal life. Deborah's life was not normal. Thursday and Friday passed in a blur of careful acting. Deborah went to school, taught classes, marked scripts, came home, cooked, smiled when she needed to smile. Kelvin came home late some nights, acted tired, acted stressed, acted like a hard-working husband. He never once guessed his wife was building a case behind him. Friday evening, Kelvin suggested they go out for dinner, a rare treat during a busy season. They went to a nice Italian place, sat in a cozy booth and talked about the next holiday coming up like two people whose marriage wasn't already dead. "My parents want us to come to Abeokuta," Kelvin said, twirling pasta on his fork. "But honestly, I was thinking, maybe we stay here. Just the two of us. Quiet holiday. We've been busy." "That sounds perfect," Deborah said, thinking about how by holidays their home would probably be empty and lawyers would be calling. Then Kelvin reached across the table and held her hand. "Deborah," he said suddenly, with that soft voice he used when he wanted to sound sincere. "I know I've been distracted. I'm sorry. You've been patient, supportive. I don't tell you enough how much I appreciate you." Deborah looked at his hand on hers. The same hand that wore the ring she once believed in. "It's okay," Deborah said calmly. "Things will calm down." Kelvin smiled like he believed himself. "They will. After all this, we can focus on us again. Maybe plan that vacation we've been talking about. Just you and me reconnecting." "I'd like that," Deborah lied easily now. After dinner, Kelvin insisted on taking a selfie. "We never take pictures anymore," he said, lifting his phone. Deborah forced a smile. He posted it immediately with a caption like a performance. "Date night with my favorite person. So lucky." Later, Deborah would look at that photo and marvel at how convincing lies could look. Saturday, Rachel texted Deborah one simple message. "Everything is in place. Are you ready?" Deborah looked at Kelvin in the home office, laughing quietly on a work call, Diana's name slipping out like it was normal. Deborah thought about room 847, about the note, about the messages planning her financial ruin, about 6 years of love being treated like something disposable. She typed back, "I'm ready." Monday morning. The dominoes were set. And in just over 48 hours, Kelvin and Diana would learn the most dangerous mistake you can make is underestimating someone who has nothing left to lose. Monday morning came with that strange kind of heat that feels wrong for December. Deborah woke up before her alarm, eyes already open, body already awake like it had been running all night. This was the day. After weeks of quiet planning, evidence gathering, pretending, swallowing pain like medicine, everything was finally lined up. Kelvin was still asleep beside her, face calm, breathing steady, like a man whose life was not about to explode. Deborah looked at him and felt nothing. Not love. Not rage. Just a cold, clear certainty. She slipped out of bed quietly and went downstairs to make coffee. The house was still dark. Quiet. Only the hum of the fridge and the faint sound of an early morning bus in the distance. Deborah stood at the kitchen window, watching the sky lighten, and reviewed the timeline in her head one more time. Her phone buzzed. First message. Rachel. "The workplace petition is being filed this morning. Meridian's legal team will receive notice. We have our opening." Another buzz. James. "Tunde responded to your message. He wants to meet today. He sounds devastated but ready." Then Rachel again, right after. "Divorce papers are ready. Kelvin will be served at his office at mid-morning. Maximum professional embarrassment. I've also sent our full evidence package to Meridian's board, their general counsel, and head of HR. They'll have it this morning." Deborah took a slow breath. The machine was moving now. No turning back. She typed short replies confirming everything, then put the phone face down like she didn't want to see the future coming. Kelvin came downstairs a little later, already dressed for work in a sharp office outfit, looking clean and confident, like a man who believed he was still in control. He poured coffee and immediately checked his phone. His eyebrows pulled together. Weird message from one ex-staff, Kelvin said, scrolling. Some workplace complaint nonsense. Diana forwarded something to leadership. Everybody is asking questions. Deborah kept her voice casual. What kind of complaint? Kelvin shrugged like it was annoying. Hostile work environment? Manipulation. People always want to blame someone when they can't handle pressure. He shook his head with a small laugh. Some people are just bitter. Deborah nodded slowly. In a few hours, she thought, you'll understand what bitter really means. Kelvin kissed her cheek and grabbed his keys. I might be late again, he said. Diana wants to do damage control and we have that client meeting. Okay, Deborah replied. Have a good day. Kelvin walked out like it was a normal Monday. The moment his car left the compound, Deborah executed phase 1. She didn't rush. She didn't shake. She simply moved like someone who had already cried all her tears in private. She sent the first message to Tunde. A straight, clean message, no drama. Sir, I'm Deborah. Your wife Diana has been having an affair with my husband Kelvin for months. I discovered it when I surprised him on a work trip and heard them together in his hotel room. I have documentation. Hotel receipts, call logs, messages. I'm sorry. Then the second message went through Rachel's office to Meridian's leadership. We represent Deborah, spouse of Kelvin, an employee of Meridian. We are in possession of documented evidence of abuse of power, inappropriate supervisor-subordinate relationships, misuse of company funds, and a repeated pattern of cover-ups using NDAs. We are coordinating with affected parties and will take further action if this is not addressed immediately. Then a third message went to journalists James had identified, people who actually published serious stories. Deborah didn't hide behind anonymous. She didn't write like a gossip blog. She wrote like someone who came with evidence. I have documentation of systematic misconduct inside Meridian involving a senior executive and multiple employees over several years, including cover-ups. If you're interested in investigating, I'm willing to speak and provide proof. Then Deborah went to school. She walked into a classroom and taught like a normal teacher. Her students had no idea their teacher was calmly orchestrating the biggest storm of her life. She taught a lesson on power, how people abuse it, how systems protect it, how silence keeps it alive. And as her students argued back and forth, Deborah listened like someone who had just learned the same lesson in her own bed. During her break period, her phone rang. Tunde. Deborah stepped into an empty corridor to take it. Hello, she said. Is this Deborah? Tunde asked. His voice was tight, controlled, like he was holding himself together with force. Yes. There was a pause, like he was deciding if he wanted to hear the truth again. I saw your message, he said. I need to know this is real. I need to know you're not lying to destroy my family. Deborah closed her eyes for a second. I wish I was lying, she said softly. But it's real. I heard them myself. I have messages. I have proof. How long? Tunde asked, and that's when his voice cracked. Deborah chose her words carefully. From what we've gathered, months, possibly longer. Tunde inhaled shakily. We have kids, he said quietly. I trusted her. I never questioned anything. Every late meeting, every trip, I believed. Deborah's chest tightened because that pain sounded too familiar. I know, Deborah said. I trusted my husband too. Silence. Then Tunde's voice hardened. What happens now? That depends on you, Deborah replied. But if you're willing, we can coordinate. This isn't only about your marriage and mine. There's a pattern. People have been pushed out. NDAs have been used to bury it. Tunde went quiet again. Deborah could almost hear him sitting somewhere, staring at a wall, seeing his life in pieces. Then he spoke, and his tone was no longer shaky. Okay, he said. Let's do it. They're going to face consequences. Deborah returned to class, and for the rest of the morning, she taught like someone whose heart had become steel. Then her phone started exploding. She didn't check immediately. She finished her lesson. She dismissed her students. Only then did she look. First message from Rachel, a photo. Kelvin had been served. Right there at Meridian's office, in front of colleagues. In front of people who greeted him every morning and laughed with him in meetings. The papers were in his hand. The shock was on his face. Deborah stared at the photo for a long moment. Not with joy, with a strange, quiet relief. Then James sent updates. Meridian's board called an emergency meeting. Diana has been placed on administrative leave pending investigation. Tunde has already contacted a lawyer. A reporter is publishing the preliminary story today. Deborah's heart stayed calm, but her stomach felt like it was full of stones. Then the calls started. Kelvin called once, twice, then back to back like panic was chasing him. Deborah let it ring. At lunch, she listened to the voicemails. First voicemail, angry and loud. Deborah, what is this rubbish? Divorce papers were brought to me in the office, in front of people. Do you know how humiliating that was? Call me back now. Second voicemail, softer, trying to sound reasonable. Deborah, please. We need to talk. I don't even understand what's happening. If you're upset, we should discuss it like adults, not this public nonsense. Third voicemail, worry creeping in. Is this some kind of prank? Did someone hack something? Please call me. I'm starting to get scared. Fourth voicemail, now panicked. Diana has been suspended. HR is dragging her into meetings. She's not answering her phone. Deborah, did you do this? Fifth voicemail, his voice shaking. Okay, I know you know, I don't know how, but please, let's talk. I can explain. Sixth voicemail, full begging. I'm sorry. I'm so sorry. We can fix this. It was a mistake. Please don't throw away our marriage. We can do counseling. Please just talk to me. Seventh voicemail. He was crying. Deborah, please. I'm begging you. Don't do this. Don't destroy everything. I love you. Deborah saved every voicemail. Evidence. Then she called him back. He picked on the first ring like he had been holding his phone with both hands. Deborah. I know about Diana, Deborah said calmly, cutting through whatever lie he had prepared. I know about the hotel. I know about all of it. Silence. Then Kelvin's voice, small and broken. How? I was there, Deborah said. I surprised you on that trip. I stood outside your door. I heard everything. Kelvin's breathing turned fast. Deborah, it's simple, Deborah interrupted. Her voice didn't rise. That was what made it scary. You cheated on me. You lied every day. And you were planning to move money around and blindside me when you had leverage. I saw the messages. Then Kelvin did exactly what guilty people do. He tried to switch the crime. You went through my phone, he snapped, anger flashing through his panic. Deborah gave a short, cold breath. I hired a private investigator, she said. Everything is documented. Everything is real. Kelvin's voice started shaking again. You're trying to destroy me, he said. My career, my name. I'm holding you accountable, Deborah corrected. You and Diana made choices. Those choices have consequences. Please, Kelvin whispered. We can fix this. I'll end it. I swear we can save this marriage. Deborah's eyes stung, not because she was about to forgive him, but because of how easy it was for him to beg now, after planning her ruin. No, she said quietly. We can't. Kelvin's voice cracked. So that's it? After all these years? Deborah's tone stayed steady. I'm not the one who threw it away, she said. You did, the first time you slept with her. Kelvin made a broken sound like he wanted to scream. Deborah ended the call before she could hear him fall apart any further. Because she knew what was next. The news would start spreading. Meridian would start panicking. Diana would start calling. And Kelvin would finally understand what it means to lose control. That afternoon, Deborah met Rachel and Krista Price at a quiet coffee spot on the island. Krista was the kind of journalist who didn't look flashy, but everything about her screamed serious work. Smart eyes, calm voice, and the kind of focus that made you feel like lying in her presence would physically injure you. She spread the printed documents on the table, hotel receipts, call logs, screenshots, timelines, then looked up at Deborah. This is not just an affair, Krista said. This is a pattern, abuse of power, cover-ups, people pushed out quietly. If this evidence checks out, this becomes a major story. Rachel nodded. We already have at least one former employee willing to speak, Another is reconsidering their silence because they finally realize they weren't the only one. Krista tapped the papers lightly. "I need to understand your motivation," she said to Deborah. "Are you doing this to hurt your husband and his boss? Or do you genuinely believe there's a bigger problem here?" Deborah met her gaze without flinching.
"Both," she said. "I won't pretend I'm not angry, but what I found is bigger than my pain. If nobody speaks, it continues. Another person gets trapped. Another marriage gets destroyed. Another worker gets pushed out and told to keep quiet." Krista watched her for a second, then nodded. "Can I quote you?" she asked. "Yes," Deborah said. "Use my name. I'm not hiding." They talked for over an hour. Krista asked sharp questions. Timelines, locations, who knew what, who received complaints, why Meridian kept protecting Diana. Rachel answered the legal angles carefully. Deborah answered the personal angles plainly. When the meeting ended, Krista gathered her things. "I need a little time to verify and request an official comment from Meridian," she said. "But assuming everything matches, and it's already looking very solid, I'll publish an expanded piece soon." Deborah left the meeting feeling both exhausted and strangely light. She had pulled the trigger. Now she just had to watch the fallout. The rest of Monday turned into noise. Tunde called Deborah again later that day. His voice had changed. Less shock, more steel. "I've spoken to my lawyer," he said. "I'm not protecting her. I'm protecting my children. But she's not walking away like nothing happened." Deborah understood that. Completely. James sent photos from Meridian's office area. Security walking people into meetings, staff gathered in clusters whispering, an internal memo already circulating about professional conduct and independent investigations. Kelvin sent messages back to back. Deborah replied with only one line. "Have your lawyer contact mine. Don't come to the house." Tuesday morning, Deborah woke up to an email from Diana. The subject line was bold and dramatic, like she was still trying to control the narrative. "We need to talk woman to woman." Deborah opened it once. It was long, desperate, and insulting in a polite wrapper. Diana claimed the relationship was mutual, that Kelvin pursued her too, that Deborah was vindictive, that Deborah was hurting innocent people, that Deborah should handle it privately like a mature adult. Then Diana tried to bargain. She offered to stay away from Kelvin, to recommend him for a transfer, to help him keep his job, to avoid scandal, as if she was offering Deborah a favor after setting her life on fire. Deborah read it twice, then deleted it without replying, because Diana wasn't sorry. She was scared. Wednesday, the second story hit. More people came forward. The piece was bigger now. Multiple accounts, similar patterns. Mentorship turned inappropriate, pressure to keep things quiet, promotions dangled, careers damaged, exits wrapped in silence. Meridian released a short statement. "Professional. Cold. We take these allegations seriously and have launched an independent investigation." But inside Meridian, panic was already spreading. Clients started asking questions. Senior leadership started holding meetings behind closed doors. And the one thing companies hate more than bad behavior is bad headlines. By Thursday, the full story landed, longer, deeper, and harder to ignore. This time, it wasn't whispers. It was names, patterns, proof. And Deborah's quote sat right there in black and white. "My marriage was destroyed, but what I discovered is bigger than my personal pain." This was enabled, and silence would allow it to continue. That same day, Meridian announced Diana's termination for gross misconduct and violation of professional standards. By evening, people who used to greet Diana with smiles were suddenly acting like they'd never known her. And Kelvin? Kelvin was called into a marathon HR meeting. He wasn't fired, but his future at Meridian was finished. The promotion he thought was coming vanished. His name was now attached to a scandal that nobody wanted near them. And the funniest part, funny in a bitter way, was that Diana stopped answering him. The woman who had been calling him my man, who had promised him real life next year, suddenly became unreachable. Friday afternoon, Rachel called Deborah with news. "Kelvin's lawyer wants to settle quickly," she said. "He's offering generous terms because he wants this done quietly." Deborah sat down slowly. "What's the condition?" she asked, already knowing. "They want you to sign an NDA," Rachel said.
They want you to agree not to speak publicly again about the affair or the circumstances. Deborah laughed once, short and humorless. No, she said immediately. I'm not signing any silence. Rachel sounded pleased, like she'd expected it. I told them you'd refuse, she said. So they revised it. Same terms, no NDA. They just want this over. Deborah's jaw tightened. Good, she said, then paused. And my counter? Rachel's voice sharpened. Business mode. The counter we discussed. You keep the house, he moves out, support payments for a set period, he covers legal fees, and there's a clause that if he tries to smear you publicly, he loses certain protections in the agreement. And? Rachel exhaled. They accepted. Deborah closed her eyes. Not in celebration, in relief. Because after betrayal, relief is sometimes the first emotion that feels safe. 2 weeks later, on a cold Saturday morning close to Christmas, Deborah sat in her living room surrounded by half-packed boxes. Not her boxes, Kelvin's. He had come to take his things. Clothes, books, gadgets, the furniture he insisted was his. The house was starting to look bare. But Deborah didn't mind. Every empty space felt like air returning to a room that had been suffocating. Kelvin asked to speak to her one last time before he left fully. When he arrived, Deborah almost didn't recognize him. He looked thinner. His eyes had deep shadows. His confidence was gone, like someone had drained it out of him and left the body. Thank you for letting me come, Kelvin said quietly, standing awkwardly in what used to be their shared space. The agreement says you can take your things, Deborah replied. I'm not here to fight over chairs. Kelvin swallowed. That's not why I'm here. He rubbed his hands together like he was cold, even though the room wasn't. I'm sorry, he said. Properly sorry. Not sorry I got caught. Sorry for the lies, the cheating, the planning, everything. Deborah didn't respond immediately. She waited, because she had heard enough words to last a lifetime. Kelvin's eyes filled with tears. I've been trying to understand how I became that person, he said. It started small, attention, favor, feeling important. Then it grew until I couldn't stop without exposing myself. Deborah's voice was calm. You had a choice at every step. I know, Kelvin whispered. I made terrible choices. He looked down. The worst part is, you were right about Diana. She dropped me the second things became serious. She's acting like I'm the problem, like I chased her, like I forced her. She's throwing me under the bus to save herself. Deborah felt something unexpected, pity. Not the soft pity of love. The distant pity you feel for someone who walked into fire and is shocked they got burned. I'm sorry, Deborah said quietly. That's another betrayal on top of everything else. Kelvin shook his head. I don't deserve your sympathy. Deborah nodded. You don't. A long silence sat between them. Then Kelvin whispered, Was any of it real? Did you ever feel happy with me? Deborah stared at him, and for the first time her voice carried real emotion. It was real for me, she said. That's why this hurt. Kelvin's shoulders trembled. Deborah took a slow breath. I forgive you, she said finally. Not because you earned it, but because I don't want to carry you inside me anymore. Kelvin looked up sharply. But we're not getting back together. Deborah continued, steady. That chapter is closed, completely. Kelvin nodded like he already knew. I know, he whispered. I just wanted you to know I understand what I destroyed. Deborah stood and walked to the window as Kelvin looked around the room. The places where their photos used to be, the couch where they had laughed, the corner where they once planned a future. Goodbye, Deborah, Kelvin said. Goodbye, she replied. She watched him load the last box into his car. Then he drove away. And for the first time in a long time, Deborah felt the house become quiet in a way that didn't feel lonely. It felt peaceful. Over the next few months, Deborah rebuilt her life the way people rebuild after a fire. Not with excitement, with patience, with small stubborn choices. She kept the house, but she changed it. because she didn't want to live inside old memories like a museum. She repainted the bedroom a color Kelvin would have complained about. She bought new curtains. She moved the furniture around until the sitting room stopped looking like their home and started looking like hers. The room that used to be Kelvin's work corner became a quiet reading space. Deborah put a small shelf there, stacked it with books she actually liked, and added a lamp that gave warm light that didn't remind her of late nights and lies. She also threw away a few things without guilt. A couple of framed photos. A souvenir Kelvin brought back from one of those work trips. Even the bedsheet set Kelvin insisted was special. Deborah didn't need reminders. She needed peace. She started going to the gym again, not for revenge body nonsense, but because she needed her mind to breathe. Some days she ran until her lungs burned, and she didn't know if she was running away from pain or running toward healing. Maybe both. She took up a small hobby too, painting. Nothing fancy, just simple landscapes. At first it was messy, but something about putting color on paper helped her release what words couldn't carry. Slowly, she felt her body stop being on alert all the time. Slowly, sleep stopped feeling like a battle. Kelvin's life, however, didn't rebuild. It unraveled. First, Meridian quietly reassigned him to a low-visibility role. No more big meetings, no more client-facing work, no more future leader talk. He became someone they kept around only because firing him instantly would raise questions they didn't want to answer. He was a walking headline. His colleagues avoided him the way people avoid trouble they can't explain. And then the final blow came. Kelvin realized Diana wasn't coming back. She didn't call. She didn't text. She didn't check on him. She didn't even apologize. Her lawyer released a statement through Meridian's internal investigation that painted her as a professional targeted by jealous spouses and false narratives. She went from "I love you" to "I don't know him," like flipping a switch. Kelvin tried to call her anyway. She blocked him. Just like that. And Deborah found out through someone else, because when scandal hits, everyone becomes a messenger. "Guy, that woman don't deny him completely," one of Deborah's old mutuals said on the phone, half whispering like it was gist, half shocked like it was tragedy. Deborah didn't laugh. She just exhaled, because the truth was simple. Diana wasn't loyal to Kelvin. She was loyal to power. And Kelvin had mistaken attention for love. Diana's own life also collapsed, but in a different way. She didn't just lose her job. She lost her image. The kind of image that had fed her ego for years. People in her circle stopped inviting her to things. The ones who used to respect her suddenly developed selective memory. Some friends stood by her quietly, but many disappeared. And her husband Tunde didn't play. He filed for divorce aggressively. Not because he wanted drama, but because he wanted the truth on record. He fought for custody. He fought for assets. And he made it clear he would not accept a quiet settlement that allowed Diana to walk away looking clean. He didn't want revenge. He wanted accountability. The case became public enough that it started showing up in online discussions, people talking, speculating, arguing. Some blamed Deborah, as society always tries to blame the person who exposes dirt instead of the person who created it. Some praised her. Some said she was wicked. Some said she was brave. Deborah didn't engage. She had learned something important. When you stop living for people's approval, you finally become free. Meridian tried to save itself. They moved fast. New policies, new training, new HR procedures, and an independent culture audit they suddenly cared about because the media was watching. Eventually they settled. Quietly, but not secretly. A group of former employees, people Diana had damaged over the years, filed a joint case. Meridian paid to end it, because companies prefer writing checks over admitting guilt on record. But even with money, Meridian still couldn't buy back trust. It took time. It took real change. It took new leadership, and even then the stain remained. Deborah's divorce finalized, and the day it did, she didn't celebrate with champagne. She sat on her sofa, alone, and felt something simple. Relief. Not happiness. Not victory. Just relief. Like someone had finally removed a heavy bag from her shoulders,
and her spine remembered how to stand straight. 6 months later, Deborah was on her back balcony one evening, marking scripts and sipping a glass of wine. The air was warm, quiet, a calm night that didn't ask her to fight. Then her phone buzzed. Unknown number. She stared at it for a moment, then opened it. Madam Deborah, good evening. This is Jennifer Brooks. I wanted to thank you. Because you spoke up, I found my voice again. Because you pushed, we got justice. I hope you're doing well. You did a brave thing. Deborah smiled. Not a big smile. A soft one. The kind of smile that says, maybe I didn't suffer for nothing. She typed back. Thank you. I'm glad you got justice. We all deserve better. She put the phone down and looked out at her small garden area. Flowers were blooming in quiet colors. The night air smelled clean. And in that moment, Deborah thought about that day, the day she stood outside the hotel door, hearing her marriage die on the other side. That moment had been a crossroads. She could have burst in and screamed. She could have reacted with rage and humiliation and chaos. She could have spiraled. Instead, she chose strategy. She chose evidence. She chose timing. She chose to protect herself and stop a pattern that would have continued. And through that choice, she didn't just reclaim her life. She helped pull other people out of silence too. That didn't erase the pain. Nothing erases that kind of pain, but it gave it meaning. Deborah learned something she would never forget. Betrayal will test your character. It will tempt you to become ugly, reckless, cruel. But the way you respond is what defines you. You can let it destroy you, or you can let it refine you. Deborah chose refinement, not because she was perfect, but because she refused to let betrayal turn her into someone she couldn't respect. And that was the real victory. Not that Kelvin and Diana suffered consequences, but that Deborah survived it, stood tall through it, and came out on the other side with her dignity intact. Because sometimes the best revenge isn't revenge. It's accountability. It's healing. It's moving forward with your head up, knowing you did the right thing, even when it was hard. And as Deborah sat there on that quiet evening, single but not broken, she understood something clearly. She had lost a marriage, but she had gained herself.